and have continuously decided it will be added in whatever haphazard order it feels like coming out in. And it's funny because I've seen a truck twice that's reminded me of one of, well, it's a collection of memories, and because there were so many, I'm just gonna kind of tell it as one piece, but it kind of weaves in and out of some of our story. And the truck says merchants, and what it reminded me of was, it's funny. It's one of the, I think, the things about me that impresses me about me. It's taken me a while to get over feeling like saying something like that is conceited, and it's good to get to that place where you can look at your own amazing parts and be like, that's pretty amazing. And one of the bits of praise I used to really appreciate from my masculine disease, always appreciated how it just very like gung ho at something, especially when it came to businesses. Like, I want to start this business. I do a little bit, I lean into my five type and do the research, get a little bit of information, but I usually didn't wait too long. I mean, I have Aries moon and Gemini rising. It's like, okay, I've got enough to start. That's all I need. I know the basic rules of the economy is you can get a lot of experience if you're willing to do work for cheap, just to get your foot in the door. And I also knew that my DM really wanted to get into the music business a lot. And through a karmic that I was with in between some of our story before the 14 and a half year union, I got into the music business quite a bit although I was going the route of music production. Now, by the time that Merchants Cafe came into it, that had gone and passed, and my DM and a friend of his had started playing music together, just jamming. And I was like, oh, I would love to join you guys. Can I join you guys at least sometimes? I mean, come on. And it was in our house too. So I was like, come on, let me do it sometimes. So I learned to play the bass and to play with them. And we started to do a couple. I was like, do you want to do some shows? And they were up for it. So I mean, I'd already had enough confidence from meeting various music executives and stuff when I was with the Karmic, because I was trying to get him signed on a label. So I did a lot of stuff. I talked to a lot of places. I figured out how you go through the chain of command at places like Target and Walgreens and Sears and all that stuff in order to, like, how do you get a CD from like artist and musician, the production, into the store shelves, things like that. And so I had the confidence, at least, that I knew how to start up a conversation. And I'd gotten into stuff like, was it LinkedIn meetings and things like that. I helped organize some. Oh, have to be another memory. MooCon was one, making our own opportunities. But I knew how to get it started. So I got us into, I talked to venues, I got us into some places, kind of worked alongside one of my DM's friends' band, and like got into that, got into booking them. And then I got into booking bands, and it like, for one thing, it didn't feel like our band was moving quite fast enough for me, and I really like, I wanted to work with the bands that already had a fan base, because that made it like all I had to do was plan the events, and thus starts my event planning business. And I started booking local bands, or bands that would come into town, and one of the first places that I got in contact with that was willing to let me work with them was called Merchants Cafe in downtown Seattle. And I'm fairly positive they did finally sell it and change the name. I'm not 100% sure on that, because Merchants has had, you should look it up sometime in terms of history of Seattle venues and things. It's got a lot of very cool history. I really enjoyed learning about it while I was there and kind of getting to be a part of history. And this is before the recession, too, so there was still a lot of business to be had. In any case, I really liked it because it had an opportunity to look around and say, "Ooh, you know what can we do?" And my DM used to really love. Well, he was funny. He's oh, what do you call it? An introverted extrovert, and so he's quite shy about things and not really. You know what's funny? I know that he can go and talk up a storm and talk to somebody just the way that I do. I've been trying to get him for years to see, like, you absolutely have the chops for it, but he's had a lot of challenges in believing in himself in that way. And so, like, he agreed to help, and it was kind of one of those, like, oh yeah, all right, I'll help if you have, like, really, like, what do they call it? Force me into it, why don't you? And um what he ended up doing was helping me run the sound, and it was so great because I know like he had oh man, he had some really cool, not quite antique, maybe classic recording devices, like old Tascam and things like that. And we got into some of the newer stuff, and we were just getting into setting up a home studio. So it was really nice to be able to like take the stuff out and like learn to do it. And what's funny is, I mean, we got into working at Merchants Cafe, and there were so many nights. I think my favorite was there was a Friday the 13th that I took, and they said like not a lot of people like to take these nights, but if you want it. And I'd already like I'd been one of the other things my DM used to really compliment me a lot on, it was my Craigslist ads. And like I remember when Craigslist started, and then like you were able to get on and do so much with it. And like, I mean, as the underdog, so I would learn to craft my ads that they were pithy enough and just right to get in there and get, get bands, get venues, get things like that. And I'd hooked up with a couple of bands that really liked the idea of doing a Friday the 13th show, and they had big fan bases. We like packed the place. We had more people than we knew what to do with. And the funny thing is, like, I had worked a cheap door so that I could, so I could get in with the venue because they already had other people and stuff in there. And like, I mean, sometimes the best way you get into a job like that is or a business like that is you offer your services for a lot less. And in any case, it really, I mean, I broke even most nights with that amount, but because they had really like, we had really over promoted the show, and the band had their own, well, the bands had their own fan bases and stuff that like melded together. Like we made a ton of money on that night, and it was fun. I still remember because like, I mean, I'm doing a bit of emceeing, and I'm making sure that the band will, I managed the drinks and things like that. I made sure that, everything went smooth and nobody had any like diva moments or drama queen moments. And my DM is over, he's over in the corner. I feel bad for him because there's so many people, and we had cordoned off a table area for him. And so, like, he was safe as long as he was in there. But I knew there really wasn't much space to come out of that space. And I still remember seeing him from across the room a few times, and like, because I worked the door and then went to the bar and did things like that. And I just remember thinking, like, you're so worried about being afraid in different situations, and look how well you're handling this. Like, I mean, he was really dialed in to the soundboard and making sure that everything could be heard, and making sure that he was like, not getting pulled into the noise of the crowd. And I don't know, I've always loved watching him work when he's in that zone. And it was really great to see those moments. And we did a number of shows at Merchants that was just really fun. I don't know. I'm still like in my memory. I'm thinking like they had the checkered black and white floor, and it was so old and ancient. I mean, it had probably gum on it from like 20 years ago that had like cemented and stuff like that. And I mean, it's definitely an iconic Seattle bar that had just been there just forever. I know it wasn't always a bar either. I definitely, like I said, if you want to look up some fun history, or you like music history, things like that, look up Merchants Cafe in Seattle. It might, I know the building's still there. I don't know if it's still the Merchants Cafe, but it had a long, interesting history. And we did a couple other, I think we did J&M Cafe nearby just before the recession, and then they closed. So we only got to do one show there. And there's a whole bunch of venues down there that were really great to work. And, I think my favorite parts in that is like the teamwork in it. I know that that's always been a really fun thing for me with my DM. Like when I think about like what is it about our union that I really appreciate, it's always been that like that working together energy. I probably fill up a ton more videos that and I want to chunk them down into specific memories more just for my own enjoyment, but just how many different projects we've worked on, how many different venues that we've gone to, how many different kinds of events we've done. And what I love is like my DM used to very much be like, I'd say, hey, do you want to join me on this adventure? I really could use a sound guy, or I could use a mechanic, or I could use this. And he was like, yeah, all right, And I mean, we'd work our way through the ups and downs of like, anxiety and things like that, but we always managed to do it, and somehow we always managed to come through it not too horribly. I mean, there's been a couple of times that things did not go the way that they were supposed to go at all, but we were always laughing when we were done with it. And I mean, there's so many years I can remember us doing things like that, and that was, I'd say, even just talking about our music connections alone could probably take up hours of talking about it. But I think that's some of my favorite there, though, was like me just in my childlike empress energy of like, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to do this thing. You want to join me? Like, what did they? There's like that meme where the one cat's licking the other cat's nose, and like, what are you doing? Shh, just trust me, right? And a lot of it was like that, and we had a lot of fun adventures and learning lessons in all sorts of ways. I might even get back on and share a couple of other of them, but I think for right now, I like leaving this one where it is. So if you watch this now or you're gonna watch it later, I hope you enjoy the story of us. I'll see you in the next video.